Imagine walking into work tomorrow morning, right? You're grabbing your coffee, and you realize your new boss is your older brother.
Oh,
And I
wow.
don't mean like a figurative brother. I mean the exact same guy who, used to put you in headlocks.
Right, the one who knows all your insecurities.
Exactly. The guy who would call out every single lie you told your parents when you were a kid.
Sounds like an absolute HR nightmare, honestly.
Totally. I mean, we usually want our professional leadership to look like this perfectly formatted spreadsheet, right? Sterile, detached, safe.
Mm-hmm. Very predictable.
But today we're flipping that completely upside down. So welcome everyone to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're looking at a stack of writings by Jimmy Perez. He's a guy who describes himself as a student of the human condition.
Which is a great title, by the way.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore his highly personal, really grassroots philosophy of leadership. Specifically, we're looking at two core concepts,
Mm-hmm.
the Big Brother leadership approach and the leadership alternator.
Yeah, and what makes these sources so compelling is how they completely reframe the modern concept of management.
Right.
Like, Praise isn't offering up the usual corporate buzzwords or tips for optimizing your calendar.
Yeah, no life hacks here.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He's framing leadership as this deeply human, sometimes painful, and honestly, ultimately spiritual daily practice.
Wow.
We're going to see that this is way less about managing tasks on a board and entirely about managing your own character.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Perez actually coined the term Big Brother leadership for a very specific reason.
Right, he couldn't find anything else that fit.
Exactly. He literally couldn't find an existing management style that matched his natural approach to dealing with people.
Yeah.
I have to admit, though, when I first read the words Big Brother, my mind immediately went straight to George Orwell.
Oh, sure, 1984.
Right. You picture this dystopian surveillance state, cameras in the break room, a boss watching your every move, just waiting to punish you.
Yeah, that's a very natural reaction to that phrase.
Yeah.
However, Perez is being entirely literal with his terminology here.
Oh,
He
sure.
means leading your team exactly like a good older sibling leads a younger sibling.
Which is messy.
Very.
It's loud, it's deeply invested, and it involves a very specific type of tough love, you know?
Mhm.
The text outlines some core traits of this approach, and the first one focuses on accountability. But Perez uses a very deliberate phrase.
Yeah, he says a leader must hold others painfully accountable, right?
Yes, painfully accountable, yet with total love and respect.
And that combination is really the entire secret to this dynamic.
Yeah.
Because, holding someone painfully accountable without love is just tyranny.
Right, that's just a boss yelling at you over a typo.
Exactly. But holding someone accountable with love means you're willing to embrace the intense discomfort of a hard conversation.
Because you actually care about them.
Right. Strictly because you care about that person's trajectory. You give strong, unflinching feedback. But the person receiving it never doubts your underlying support.
Like, think about a coach who pushes you to the absolute brink of exhaustion during practice.
Yeah, great analogy.
They aren't doing it because they enjoy your suffering. Well, maybe some do, but good ones don't. They do it because they instinctively see your potential.
And Perez actually highlights this. He says that seeing greatness in others is this crucial gift every leader must develop.
Right.
A good big brother instinctively knows what their younger sibling is capable of.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you have to see that hidden potential. And more importantly, you have to communicate it so relentlessly that the mentee actually starts to believe it themselves.
Let's sustain that kind of environment, though. Perez argues that a leader must maintain what he calls a non-negotiable positive outlook.
Non-negotiable being the key word there.
Right. If you think about family dynamics, the younger sibling is constantly modeling the older sibling's behavior.
Constantly. They absorb everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the leader has to project a vision of the future where the team can thrive, not just survive the week.
Yeah. Though he does add that you still have to be a realist.
Sure.
You have to be prepared for failure, have contingency plans, all that. But the baseline frequency you broadcast to your team has to be positive.
Which brings me to a concept that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Perez claims a great leader must be extremely critical.
Right. The extreme criticism principle.
Hang on, though. If my boss critiques every single minor thing I do, like the formatting of an email, a slightly missed deadline, a stray comment in a meeting, I am not going to feel loved.
You're going to feel micromanaged.
Exactly. I'll probably start looking for a new job. Doesn't conventional wisdom tell us we need to, pick our battles?
But what's fascinating here is how Perez completely dismantles that conventional wisdom.
Really?
Yeah, he explicitly states his intense dislike for the phrase pick our battles.
Wow.
His counterintuitive view is that passing up the opportunity to speak out on a missed detail actually causes the issue to snowball.
Oh, I see. So by ignoring the small stuff to spare someone's feelings today, you're actually creating a massive monster down the road.
Exactly. Think about the last time you saw a coworker cut a corner on a project. Did you say something?
Probably not, honestly.
Right. And if you didn't, Perez would argue you just silently endorsed that lower standard.
Oh, wow.
It's basically the broken windows theory applied to daily management.
Oh, like if a factory manager walks past a piece of trash on the floor and doesn't pick it up.
Yes. The team instantly knows that trash on the floor is now the acceptable standard.
That makes total sense.
Perez believes that while you shouldn't, scream about every minor detail, you must, at the very least, communicate your standards on everything that falls short.
Right, addressing a slight drift in the moment is how you prevent a catastrophic failure later. Everything is part of the battle.
Everything.
But, okay, if you are demanding that level of painful accountability and refusing to let even the small things slide, your team is eventually going to ask, who are you to judge me?
Oh, absolutely they will.
Right. If you just walk around being extremely critical all day, people are going to resent you.
Mm-hmm.
Which means before you can critique anyone else, you have to preemptively bleed a little bit yourself. And Perez does this through what he calls cheat codes.
Yeah, this is where the vulnerability comes
Okay.
in. Perez talks about the absolute necessity of a leader sharing their own tremendous personal failures with their mentees.
Right.
He compares these shared experiences to video game cheat codes or shortcuts.
Like imagine a project goes completely off the rails and your team is panicking.
Right, typical Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of calling an urgent meeting to assign blame, Perez's approach is to walk into the room and say, listen, when I was in your exact role 5 years ago, I made this same miscalculation.
Yeah.
And it cost us a major client. Here's the massive fallout I had to deal with, and here's exactly how I fixed it.
Right. You are literally giving your team the map of all the hidden landmines you've already stepped on.
So they can bypass those roadblocks.
Exactly. And if we connect this to Perez's own background, the necessity of this vulnerability becomes incredibly clear.
Oh, yeah, the sources mention this.
Yeah, they tell us that when Perez first joined the leadership ranks, he did so in the exact same location where he had previously been a regular employee.
Oh, man. That has to be the single hardest transition anyone can make in a career.
It's brutal.
You are suddenly managing your peers. The people you used to complain about the boss with are now reporting to you.
Right. It forces absolute humility. He couldn't rely on a shiny new title to make people follow him because they already knew him as just another guy on the floor.
So he had to earn his credibility from scratch.
Completely from scratch. And while his previous bosses treated leadership as a series of constant fires to put out.
Just running around stressed and highly reactive.
Exactly. Perez chose a different route. He decided to show up calm, physically available, and relentlessly consistent.
And according to the text, this wasn't even some grand master plan. Because he was calm and available, people just started coming to him organically.
Yeah, they brought him work concerns and then eventually personal troubles.
The mentoring just happened naturally,
Mm-hmm.
but then he formalized this organic mentorship into what I think is one of the most actionable tools in the entire source material.
The 30-day goals.
Yes, the 30-day goals.
It's a practical application of the big brother dynamic, setting an A, B, and C goal with a team member, and this is the crucial part,
Right.
putting a hard date on the calendar to return in exactly 30 days to review the progress.
Let's visualize this. You sit down with a struggling employee and say, Goal A is improving your response time to clients. Goal B is mastering this new software. Goal C is pitching one new idea in our weekly meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just throw that into the void. You lock in a meeting for next month to look them in the eye and see if they did it.
And you do this over and over.
Right. But by doing this, Perez realized he was accidentally building something around himself. He calls it an accountability wall.
I love this concept.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm.
But we need to break down how this wall actually gets built. What is it a wall against?
Well, it is a wall against the leader's own complacency.
Okay.
We usually view mentoring as a top-down gift, right?
Like the wise, established leader generously bestowing their vast knowledge upon the grateful follower.
Exactly. Very paternalistic. But Perez noticed that in demanding high standards from others, You inherently create a rigid accountability chain for yourself.
Oh, interesting.
When you tell an employee, I expect you to improve your communication, and I will check your progress in 30 days, you are laying down a brick.
I see. So you do that with 10 different employees, setting 30 different goals, and suddenly you have built a massive wall around yourself.
Exactly.
Because you cannot be the manager demanding everyone hit their targets if you were rolling into the office late and slacking off on your own deliverables.
Right. If you try to slide backward, you literally bump into the expectations you just set for everyone else.
No effective leader wants to be exposed as a hypocrite who fails to walk the talk.
Mm-hmm. And over the years, Perez noted that this specific discipline of holding others to a high standard and knowing those mentees were now watching his every move. It matured his own judgment.
It sharpened his commitments.
Yes. The act of leading others physically forces you to become a better person.
That is a beautiful sentiment, but looking at this objectively, there is a glaring natural flaw in this intense leadership style.
The burnout factor.
Yes. Being the big brother for an entire team, carrying this much emotional weight, what Perez refers to as having broad shoulders, it sounds impossible to sustain.
It really does.
You are constantly mentoring, constantly setting the flawless example, sharing your personal failures, and holding the line on every minor detail.
Huh.
Logically, human energy is a finite resource.
Right.
How does a leader survive this kind of output without completely burning out by month 3?
And that is the pivotal question of this entire philosophy. Because if we use strict logic, human energy works like a smartphone battery.
Yeah. If I use my phone all morning to navigate, send emails, and make calls, the battery drains. If I give all my emotional and mental energy to my team all morning, my internal battery should be flashing red by lunchtime.
Exactly. But Perez introduces a core metaphor to
Mm.
counter this, and it honestly blew my mind. He calls it the alternator of the heart.
Okay, an alternator.
Yeah. He draws this brilliant distinction between the standard battery and an alternator in a vehicle.
So for anyone listening who might not be a mechanic, a standard car battery just holds a stored charge.
Right.
You leave the headlights on without the engine running, it depletes, and eventually the car dies.
But an alternator operates on a completely different principle.
Right, an alternator generates power through movement.
Exactly. When the engine is running and the belts are turning, the alternator is physically spinning.
And that movement creates the electrical energy the car needs to run the radio and the lights.
And it actually pushes charge back into the battery. The output creates the input.
That's wild.
It is. And Perez takes this mechanical reality and applies it directly to human psychology and what he defines as spiritual intelligence.
Wait, let me interrupt real quick.
Sure.
When he uses the word spiritual here, is he talking about religion? Because bringing theology into corporate management usually alienates half the room.
No, not at all. In this context, think of spiritual intelligence as a deep, fundamental human intuition.
Okay.
It's an internal energy economy that simply doesn't follow strict mathematical rules.
Got it.
Perez points out that we usually sort our workplace experiences into two neat categories, right? Logical and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But he argues there's this third way of processing the world.
So by strict logic, sitting down for 2 hours to help a coworker fix a spreadsheet when you have your own mountain of work should leave you exhausted and stressed.
Right.
Why doesn't it?
Because of the spiritual logic of the alternator.
Hmm.
Perez explains that the more time and genuine attention he gives to serving his team, the more the world seems to return the favor.
Wow.
He writes, the more I serve, the more service finds me. The more I lean into generosity, the more doors I find opening.
Like, have you ever dragged yourself out of bed on a Saturday to help a friend move?
Oh, absolutely. The worst.
You are dreading it. It is physically taxing. But by the end of the day, sitting on the floor with a slice of pizza, you are actually buzzing with a weird kind of energy.
Yeah, you feel great.
Logically, burning all those calories carrying boxes should leave you depleted. But experientially, serving someone else actually gave you more energy.
That is the alternator spinning.
Amazing.
It's not a zero-sum transaction where you lose an hour and they gain an hour. It is a generative process.
The more you put your empathy and accountability to work, the stronger your internal engine grows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this internal generation is vital, right? It raises the next obvious question. Where does all this generated energy actually go?
Right?
Because Perez makes it abundantly clear that leadership isn't just about feeling internally fulfilled or having a warm relationship with your team.
No, the energy has to be pointed at reality. It is about execution. So let's transition from the internal state of the leader out into the real world. Because Perez does not mince his words when it comes to getting the job done.
No, it doesn't.
I'm going to quote him directly here. He says, "Effort is queen and execution is king."
Wow.
Right? All the mentorship in the world doesn't matter if the team fails to deliver. The leader must be willing to outwork most, if not all, of their team.
Hmm.
They have to remain hungry and ready to go all in on the objective.
And part of that execution requires a leader to be exceptionally nimble.
Nimble how?
Well, Perez advises that a decision that works perfectly today might be a disaster tomorrow.
Oh, sure.
You cannot marry a specific procedure just because it's comfortable. You have to remain fair to your peers, your followers, and your employer.
Which means having the flexibility to completely switch up your approach when the environment demands it.
Exactly. And you need those broad shoulders we talked about to handle the friction of pivoting the team.
But this brings us to what might be the most challenging aspect of this entire philosophy. Perez has a defining mantra for the managers he works with, a single sentence that encapsulates his view on leadership.
It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility.
I am going to push back hard on this.
I figured you might.
That sounds inherently unfair. Why should a leader take the blame for a mess they didn't make?
Okay, hear me out.
Like, imagine a vendor completely drops the ball and fails to deliver a crucial component, and now your team is going to miss a massive client deadline.
Right.
That is not your fault. Why should you carry the weight of that responsibility?
Because taking ownership is vastly different from accepting punitive blame.
How so?
Think about it like this. Imagine someone rear-ends your car at a red light.
Okay.
It is absolutely not your fault,
Not at all.
but it is your responsibility to pull over, call the insurance company, get the bumper fixed, and figure out how to get to work the next day. You can sit on the curb screaming at the sky that it isn't your fault, but you are still the one stuck on the curb.
So taking responsibility for the mess is the only way to get off the curb?
Exactly that. Perez notes that the people who stand up in the face of difficulty, even when it's unfair, are the ones who actually shape their environment.
Right.
If you only take responsibility for the tiny sliver of the world that you perfectly control, your influence will remain incredibly small.
Makes sense.
But if you have the courage to take responsibility for everything in your orbit, your ability to enact positive change becomes massive.
Which begs the ultimate question. What does this mean for you, the listener, outside the four walls of your office?
Yeah, the real-world application.
Because one of the most striking elements of Perez's writing is his absolute insistence that these habits are not just career hacks.
No, not at all.
Decades of making these small, steady choices, showing up calmly, sharing your failures, holding others painfully accountable with love, and generating energy through service, these things alter your fundamental DNA.
He emphasizes that these traits dictate how you show up as a parent, as a spouse, and as a friend.
Right.
And, Perez actually argues that those personal roles are not side gigs to your career. Wow. For most of us, our personal lives are the primary stage where true leadership is practiced.
We usually think our real leadership happens in a boardroom with a projector, right? And our home life is just the place we go to rest and recover.
Totally.
But Perez flips that entirely. The office is just the laboratory. Your life, your family, your community, that is the main event.
Exactly.
The big brother mindset, the vulnerability of the cheat codes, the alternator of the heart. These aren't just tools for middle management.
Yeah.
They are tools for being a profound human being, which inherently makes you a reliable pillar for the people who love you.
And when you stop separating the work you from the home you, the consistency of your character becomes your greatest asset.
Let's take a step back and look at the massive ground we've covered today.
We covered a lot.
We did. We started by completely redefining tough love. We threw out the sterile corporate checklists and embraced the messy big brother dynamic.
Learning to hold people painfully accountable, but wrapping that critique in unconditional respect.
And a non-negotiable vision for their success.
Right. And from there, we explored how a leader actually survives the resentment of being that critical.
Because you don't rely on your title. You earn credibility through vulnerability.
Yeah. You share your cheat codes, your past failures, to help others avoid landmines.
And you set firm 30-day goals, which in turn builds a protective accountability wall around yourself, forcing you to constantly walk the talk.
Exactly. We then tackled the very real threat of burnout.
Bypassing the logic of a draining battery and embracing the alternator of the heart.
Yeah, learning that genuine spiritual generosity doesn't empty your tank. It generates new internal energy through the very act of serving others.
Finally, we grounded all of this theory in ruthless execution. We confronted the reality that effort is queen and execution is king.
Culminating in the immense courage required to look at a broken situation and say, it may not be my fault, but is my responsibility.
And we recognize that this level of ownership is ultimately meant for our homes and communities, not just our companies.
It really has been an absolute masterclass in grassroots, human-centric
Mhm.
leadership.
It has. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today.
Okay.
We talked at the very beginning about that deeply invested, fiercely protective friction of an older sibling, right?
Yeah.
If the alternator of the heart truly charges up through the act of service, I want you to think about a current obligation in your life right now that feels incredibly draining.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It could be a difficult team member who isn't pulling their weight, a frustrating dynamic with a family member, or maybe a massive project that feels completely stuck in the mud.
We all have one of those.
We do. What would happen if tomorrow morning, instead of treating that situation as a chore that is draining your battery, you approached it with Perez's big brother mindset?
Wow.
What if you invested genuine, loving accountability into that person? What if you shared a personal failure to build a bridge and took total responsibility for the outcome, even if the mess wasn't your fault to begin with?
Could that massive battery drain actually transform into
Mm.
the very thing that gives you energy?
It is definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the human condition. We'll catch you on the next one.